I don't care what you think you are. Step out of the vehicle, now. The screen flickers. Courtroom wood creaks as someone shifts weight. Dashcam timestamp glows white. February 14th, 1943. Brake lights bleed red across pavement. A woman's hands rest on the steering wheel. Visible, steady, empty. Officer Travis Dane's voice cuts through the speakers again. Sharper this time. Did you hear me? I said step out. The woman on the footage doesn't flinch. She reaches slowly toward the glove box, narrating each movement aloud before her fingers touch plastic. My registration is here. I'm opening the compartment now. Her voice is calm. Too calm for someone facing flashing lights and a hand hovering near a holster. Travis steps closer to her window, flashlight beam jerking across the dashboard. I didn't ask for registration. I asked you to exit the vehicle. She complies. The driver's door swings open. Her shoes meet asphalt. Flat soles, no buckles, nothing that clinks or scrapes. She stands with her hands visible at chest height, palms open. Travis Dane had just ordered his commanding officer out of her car like a suspect. He didn't know it yet. If you've ever wondered what happens when a cop arrests someone who outranks him, keep watching. This case will change how you see every traffic stop. The prosecutor leans forward in the present-day courtroom, remote in hand, eyes on the jury. He pauses the video. The frozen frame shows a black woman in her mid-40s, face half-shadowed by headlight glare, expression unreadable. Ladies and gentlemen, Prosecutor Martin Ortiz begins. You'll hear claims of misconduct, of retaliation, of a so-called unlawful arrest. But what you're seeing right here is a routine traffic stop, an officer doing his job, a motorist who escalated a simple interaction into something it didn't need to be. He clicks forward. The footage resumes. Travis circles the sedan, taps the rear taillight assembly with his flashlight. The plastic casing is intact. Both bulbs glow red when the woman taps her brake pedal at his instruction. He returns to her window anyway. Taillight malfunction. You're aware of that? Both lights were functional when I began driving 20 minutes ago. I can show you my inspection report from... Stay where you are. He cuts her off. Walks back to his patrol car. Radio static crackles through the dashcam audio. The woman stands beside her sedan, hands still visible, shoulders square. She doesn't pace, doesn't check her phone, doesn't do anything a guilty person might do while a cop runs their license. Travis returns. His expression has shifted. Something harder now. Something decided. Ma'am, I need you to turn around. Hands behind your back. I'd like to understand the reason for turn around. She doesn't resist. Doesn't pull away. She rotates slowly, arms moving behind her. Metal clicks. The handcuffs close around her wrists tighter than necessary. Travis jerks her hands upward, not enough to dislocate, but enough to make her shoulder blades pinch together. She exhales through her nose, says nothing. You're under arrest for obstruction of a peace officer, California Penal Code Section 148. I haven't obstructed anything. I've complied with every... You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. The backup unit arrives, Unit 51. Officer Vickers steps out, thumbs hooked in his vest. Travis nods toward the woman. Uncooperative motorist, resisting commands, claiming to be law enforcement. Shay's eyebrows lift. He glances at the woman. She meets his gaze, says nothing. Her jaw is set. Her breathing is controlled. She's counting something in her head, maybe seconds, maybe violations, maybe the number of witnesses who'll never be called. Travis opens the rear door of his patrol car, guides her inside with a palm pressed too hard against the crown of her head. The door slams. Through the metal grate separating front and back seats, her face is visible in the rearview mirror. Still calm, still watching. Shay leans close to Travis, voice low but picked up by the dashcam mic. She really claimed to be a cop? Yeah, didn't have a badge, didn't have ID, just a story. Dispatch confirm? Travis shrugs. Doesn't matter, she escalated. That's on her. The footage cuts to black. Prosecutor Ortiz stops the playback. He turns to the jury, hands folded. You'll hear a lot of testimony about what happened that night, but the evidence is right there. Officer Dane followed protocol. He made a lawful stop. The defendant refused to comply. Everything else is noise. He sits. The defense attorney, a woman in her late 30s, gray suit, no jewelry, rises. Janelle Wu doesn't approach the screen. She doesn't need to. She's already won this moment. She just has to let the jury sit with what they saw. Members of the jury, you just watched a woman comply with every command. You heard her narrate her movements to avoid any misunderstanding. You saw her stand with her hands visible while Officer Dane ran her license. She didn't resist. She didn't flee. She didn't raise her voice. Janelle pauses. Lets the silence stretch. What you didn't see is what happened after that footage. What you didn't hear is the 10 minutes of audio that's missing from the official record. And what you don't know yet, what Officer Dane didn't know that night, is who that woman really is. She sits. The judge glances at the clock. We'll take a 15-minute recess. Jurors, do not discuss the case. The gallery empties slowly. Renee Harlow remains at the defense table, hands folded, eyes on the blank screen. She's been here before, waiting for systems to catch up with facts. 22 years on the force taught her patience. 6 months of this trial taught her that patience has limits. Janelle leans close, voice low. You okay? Renee nods once. She's not okay, but she's functional. That's enough. They're going to call Travis next. When he takes the stand, don't react, no matter what he says. I know. I mean it. They want you to look angry, defensive, emotional. Renee turns her head slightly, meets Janelle's eyes. I've been sitting in briefing rooms with men like Travis for 2 decades. I know how to keep my face blank. Janelle exhales, nods, checks her notes. The recess ticks down. Across the aisle, Prosecutor Ortiz speaks quietly with a young woman in a police uniform. She's taking notes. Probably a department liaison. They're coordinating testimony, making sure stories align. Renee recognizes the tactic. She used to teach it. 3 weeks before the stop, Renee Harlow stood at the front of a briefing room addressing 60 officers. Morning shift. District 9. The kind of routine meeting where attendance was mandatory and attention was optional. General Order 4.12 goes into effect today, she said, voice carrying without a microphone. If someone claims law enforcement affiliation during a stop, you verify through dispatch before making custodial decisions. It's not optional, it's policy. Heads nodded. A few officers scribbled notes. Most stared at phones under the table, thumbs moving. Renee kept talking. This isn't about rank, it's about procedure. If someone says they're a cop, a federal agent, a prosecutor, whatever, you confirm it. You don't guess. You don't assume. You verify. She scanned the room. 3rd row, left side. Officer Travis Dane, phone in his lap. Screen visible from her angle. He was scrolling through a news feed. Hadn't looked up once. Officer Dane. His head snapped up, eyes wide. Phone disappeared into his pocket. Yes, Commander? What's the first step if a motorist claims law enforcement status? Silence. 2 seconds. 3. Someone coughed. Verify through dispatch? Correct. And if dispatch confirms? Then proceed based on their instructions? Wrong. You proceed with caution and respect. You don't escalate. You don't assume fraud. You treat them like what they are. A colleague until proven otherwise. Renee moved to the next slide. Didn't wait for acknowledgement. Travis would either remember the policy or he wouldn't. She couldn't force comprehension. She could only document that the training happened. After the briefing, she returned to her office. 2nd floor, corner room, window facing the parking lot. The space was smaller than her rank warranted, but she'd stopped requesting upgrades. Every time she asked, the facilities committee found reasons to delay. Budget constraints, renovation schedules. asbestos concerns that mysteriously appeared and disappeared depending on who was asking. Her desk was organized the way she organized evidence files. Color-coded folders, alphabetical tabs, a coffee mug that read "Evidence-Based Policing" next to a framed commendation from the mayor. The commendation was 3 years old. The mayor who signed it had lost re-election. The new mayor hadn't invited her to any public events yet. Renee opened her laptop, checked the deputy chief posting. Still active. Still accepting applications. She'd submitted hers 6 months ago. The selection committee kept pushing back the interview date. First it was scheduling conflicts. Then it was additional candidates to review. Last week, the committee chair told her they were exploring a broader pool. She closed the browser, opened her email instead. 43 unread messages. Most were automated reports. A few were complaints from officers about scheduling. One was from Lieutenant Ford Becker, subject line, "Need to talk." She opened it. "Commander, we should discuss the disciplinary action you recommended for Officer Willis. I think you're being too hard on him. It was a judgment call. Let's not blow this out of proportion." Ford Officer Willis had used excessive force on a handcuffed suspect. 3 witnesses, body camera footage. Renee's recommendation was a 5-day suspension and retraining. Ford wanted a written warning. No suspension, no notation in the permanent file. Renee replied in 2 sentences. "The recommendation stands. If you disagree, file a formal objection through the chain of command." She hit send, closed the laptop, rubbed her eyes. 22 years. She'd worked patrol in 3 districts, made detective ahead of schedule, passed the sergeant's exam on her first attempt, scored in the top 5% on the lieutenant's test, earned her commander rank through clearance rates that made the department look good in press releases. And still, every disciplinary action she recommended got pushback. Every policy she enforced got second-guessed. Every time she held someone accountable, someone higher up asked if she was sure it was necessary. Her phone buzzed. Text from her sister Maya. "Dinner tomorrow? Haven't seen you in 3 weeks." Renee typed back. "Can't. Deposition prep." "For what?" Renee stared at the screen. She hadn't told Maya about the Willis case, hadn't mentioned the stalled promotion, hadn't explained why she'd been working 70-hour weeks trying to stay ahead of a system that kept moving the finish line. Work stuff. "I'll call you this weekend." She put the phone down, stood, stretched. Her lower back ached from sitting through budget meetings where her requests for body camera upgrades got tabled while other districts received new patrol cars. Someone knocked. She turned. Paige Carlisle stood in the doorway. Detective, Investigations Unit. 15 years in, politically connected, always dressed like she was about to testify in front of a grand jury. "Commander, got a minute?" Renee gestured to the chair across from her desk. Paige sat, crossed her legs, set a manila folder on her knee. "I'm reviewing the Willis complaint. Ford thinks you're overreacting." "Ford doesn't supervise use-of-force investigations. I do." "True. But Ford has relationships with the union, and the union thinks 5 days is excessive for a first offense." "It's not a first offense. Willis has 2 prior complaints. Both were dismissed because the complainants didn't follow up." Paige opened the folder, scanned a page, closed it again. "Look, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying this is going to create friction. The union's already upset about the new bodycam policy. If we pile on with a suspension, then officers will learn that excessive force has consequences." Paige sighed, leaned back. "You know what I respect about you, Harlo? You actually believe that." "You don't?" "I believe in picking battles. This one's going to cost you political capital you might need later." Renee met Paige's eyes, didn't blink. "If I spend political capital making sure officers don't beat handcuffed suspects, that's a cost I'm willing to pay." Paige stood, tucked the folder under her arm. "Your call. But don't say I didn't warn you when the promotion committee asks why half the precinct thinks you're difficult to work with." She left. Renee sat down, opened her laptop again, pulled up the Willis bodycam footage for the fourth time, watched the officer's fist connect with a suspect's jaw while two other officers held the man's arms, watched the suspect's head snap back, watched the blood. She closed the video, saved the file, started drafting the final report. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But unknown numbers sometimes meant witnesses willing to talk off the record. Commander Harlow? Commander, this is Captain Ross. I'm calling about the gang task force position. Renee straightened. She'd applied for the regional task force lead 6 months ago. It was a lateral move in rank, but a significant step in responsibility. Multi-jurisdictional oversight. Federal partnerships. The kind of assignment that led to deputy chief. Yes, Captain. Thank you for calling. I wanted to let you know personally that we're moving forward with Lieutenant Becker. Silence. Renee processed the words. Ran them back. Checked for misunderstanding. Lieutenant Becker has half my clearance rate. He's got strong relationships across the region. The task force needs someone who can build consensus. Consensus on what? Enforcement strategy or political optics? Captain Ross's tone cooled. I understand you're disappointed, but the decision's been made. I thought you'd appreciate a direct notification rather than hearing through channels. I appreciate honesty, Captain. Can I ask if my pending disciplinary recommendations factored into the decision? I can't speak to the committee's deliberations, but I will say this. Leadership isn't just about being right. It's about being effective. The line went dead. Renee set the phone down, stared at the wall. The framed commendation from the old mayor seemed like a relic now, a souvenir from a version of her career that had ended without anyone announcing it. She stood, locked her office, walked downstairs. The parking lot was half empty. Evening shift had started. Day shift had gone home. She reached her sedan, a gray Honda, 8 years old, maintained meticulously because she couldn't afford the optics of driving something flashy or the expense of constant repairs. Someone had keyed the driver's side door, a single jagged line from handle to taillight. Fresh. The paint was scraped down to bare metal. Renee pulled out her phone, took 3 photos, checked the lot for cameras. The nearest one was pointed at the building entrance, not the parking spaces. Convenient. She got in the car, drove home, didn't report it. What would she say? Someone scratched her car in a lot full of cops. The list of suspects was everyone. The list of witnesses was no one. February 14th, 7:30 p.m. Renee left a community policing event at the rec center on Madison Avenue. She'd spent 2 hours answering questions from residents about response times, patrol visibility, and why officers didn't walk beats anymore. She'd smiled, nodded, took notes, promised follow-up that she'd actually deliver, unlike the commanders before her who treated community meetings like campaign stops. She wore civilian clothes, blazer over a blouse, slacks, flats, no badge, no gun. Off-duty meant off-duty. Some commanders carried everywhere. Renee preferred separation. When she clocked out, she wanted to be a person, not a target. She drove through District 9, her district, streets she knew by heart, every corner where response times lagged, every block where complaints spiked, every intersection where officers made questionable stops that she'd have to review on Monday. Red and blue lights flared in her rearview mirror. Unit 47. She checked her speedometer, 32 in a 35 zone, checked her mirrors. Both taillights reflected red. She'd had the car inspected 4 days ago. Everything was functional. She signaled, pulled over near 52nd and Parkway, put the car in park, turned off the engine, rolled down the window, placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. The officer approached, young, late 20s, confident stride, hand resting on his belt near his holster. She didn't recognize him immediately. No nameplate visible in the dark. License and registration. She kept her voice level, calm. Of course, my registration is in the glove box. I'm reaching for it now. She moved slowly, opened the glove box, retrieved the document. Her license was in her wallet. She pulled both, handed them over. The officer, Travis Dane, She could see his nameplate now, examined the license, looked at her, back at the license. Suspicion flickering across his face like he'd expected someone else. Taillights out. You aware of that? Both lights were functional when I started driving. I can check if you'd like, but stay in the vehicle. He walked to the rear. She heard him tap something. Metal on plastic. She glanced in her side mirror. Both taillights glowed red. She tapped the brake. Both brightened. No malfunction. Travis returned. His posture had changed. Shoulders back, chin up. The stance of someone who'd decided something. Step out of the vehicle. May I ask why I'm being stopped? I said step out, she complied. She opened the door, stepped onto the pavement, kept her hands visible, chest height, palms open. I'm Commander Renee Harlow, District 9. You report to my chain of command. I'd like to know the reason for this stop. Travis's expression didn't change, didn't flicker. He stared at her like she'd just told him she was the Queen of England. Your ID doesn't say Commander. My personnel ID is at the precinct. You can verify through dispatch. My badge number is 1147. Turn around, hands behind your back. Her pulse kicked up. Not panic, recognition. She'd seen this before. Officers who didn't like being corrected. Officers who couldn't tolerate a challenge to their authority. Officers who escalated because their ego demanded it. Officer Dane, I'm asking you to verify my identity before... I said turn around. She turned, slowly, hands moving behind her. The cuffs snapped closed. Too tight. Metal dug into her wrist bones. Travis jerked her arms upward. Pain shot through her shoulders. She exhaled sharply. You're under arrest for obstruction of a peace officer. California Penal Code Section 148. I haven't obstructed anything. I've complied with... Travis gripped her upper arm, squeezed, hard enough to leave marks, steered her toward his patrol car, opened the back door. His palm pressed down on her head, not guiding, forcing. Her neck bent at an angle that made her vision blur. The door slammed. She sat in the back seat, hands cuffed behind her, shoulder throbbing. Through the metal grate, she could see Travis radioing for backup. His lips moved, but she couldn't hear the words. Didn't need to. She knew what he was saying. Uncooperative. Resisting. Claiming to be someone she's not. Unit 51 arrived. Officer Vickers. She recognized him from briefings. He'd been written up twice for incomplete incident reports. Both times, the write-ups disappeared after Union intervention. Shay approached Travis. They spoke in low tones. Travis gestured toward the car, toward her. Shay glanced back. His expression was blank, neutral, the look of someone who'd learned not to ask questions. Travis opened the driver's door, slid into the front seat, started the engine. Renee leaned forward. Officer Dane, I'm requesting that you contact dispatch and verify my identity. Badge 1147, Commander Renee Harlow. He adjusted the rear-view mirror, met her eyes in the reflection. Ma'am, I suggest you remain silent until we reach the station. I'm not resisting. I'm asserting my rights. I'm also your commanding officer. He turned up the radio. Dispatch chatter filled the car, drowned out her voice. She sat back, stopped talking, started counting. Every second was documentation. Every word he ignored was evidence. Every procedural violation was ammunition. She'd spent 22 years learning how the system worked. Now she'd find out if it worked for her. They arrived at the station. Travis walked her through booking, fingerprints, mugshot, personal property inventory. He logged her wallet, keys, phone. Didn't log her verbal identification as a commander. Didn't note that she'd requested dispatch verification. The booking officer, a woman Renee recognized from quarterly reviews, looked up, blinked. Her eyes widened. Commander? Travis spoke before Renee could. Process her like anyone else. No special treatment. The booking officer hesitated, looked at Renee, looked at Travis, typed slowly. Renee saw her hands shaking. Ma'am, do you have any medical conditions or injuries? My right shoulder. The arresting officer jerked my arms upward during cuffing. There may be soft tissue damage. The booking officer typed, kept her eyes on the screen. Noted. You'll be seen by medical staff before release. Travis leaned against the counter, arms crossed. She's been compliant since arrival. No issues. Renee said nothing. Let the record speak. Travis had just contradicted his own arrest report. If he'd written that she was uncooperative, this statement would impeach him later. Medical staff checked her shoulder. Mild strain. No dislocation. They gave her ice, documented the injury, took photos. She didn't complain, didn't exaggerate, didn't minimize. She answered questions factually and let the evidence accumulate. She was released on her own recognizance at 11:47 p.m. No bail. Misdemeanor charges. Court date set for arraignment in 48 hours. Renee walked out of the station. No one called her a cab. No one offered a ride. She stood on the sidewalk in civilian clothes, shoulder aching, phone still in booking property because processing took 6 hours and the property clerk had gone home. She walked 4 blocks to a gas station, used the payphone, called Maya. It's me. I need a ride. Renee? It's almost midnight. Where are you? I'll explain when you get here. Maya arrived 20 minutes later. Renee got in the passenger seat, buckled up, stared straight ahead. Maya pulled into traffic, didn't ask questions for 3 blocks, then couldn't hold back. What happened? I was arrested. For what? Obstruction. Resisting. False charges. Maya's hands tightened on the wheel. Who arrested you? One of my own officers. He didn't recognize me. Or he did and didn't care. Are you okay? Renee touched her shoulder. The ice had numbed it. The pain would come back. I'm functional. That's not what I asked. Renee closed her eyes, leaned her head against the window. Glass was cold. Her reflection stared back, exhausted, angry, calculating. I'm not okay, but I will be, after I make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Maya drove her home, helped her inside, made tea, sat with her while Renee drafted a timeline of the stop. Every detail, every timestamp, every witness. She worked until 3 a.m., then set an alarm for 6. She had 48 hours before arraignment. 48 hours to build her defense. 48 hours to decide whether to fight this publicly or let the system bury it quietly. She chose fight. The prosecutor wants you to think this was a simple traffic stop, but when the defense reveals who this woman really is, everything you thought you knew will flip. Stay with us. Renee returned to work the next morning. She had sick days. She had personal leave. She could have stayed home, but absence would look like guilt. Silence would look like shame. She walked into the precinct at 7:55 a.m., 5 minutes before her shift started. The lobby went quiet. Desk sergeant looked up, looked down. 2 patrol officers near the coffee station turned their backs. Someone coughed. Someone else laughed, short, bitter, meant to be heard. Renee walked past them, took the stairs to the 2nd floor. Her office door was open. She always locked it. Always. She stepped inside. Her desk had been searched. Files were stacked wrong. Her mug was on the left side instead of the right. Someone had gone through her computer. The monitor was angled differently. The keyboard shifted 2 inches forward. She sat down, logged in, checked her access permissions, still active, checked her email. 68 new messages since last night. Most were automated. 3 were from officers requesting shift changes. 1 was from Lieutenant Becker. Subject line, "We need to talk." She opened it. "Commander, I heard about last night. I'm sorry this happened, but I think you should consider taking some time off. Let things cool down. The precinct's talking. It's not good for morale." Ford. She deleted it, opened a new email, addressed it to Internal Affairs. Subject, formal complaint. Officer Travis Dane, Badge 0847. She typed for 40 minutes, every fact, every timestamp, every procedural violation. She attached her personal timeline, referenced General Order 4.12, cited California Penal Code sections that Travis had violated, requested body cam footage from both Travis and Shay Vickers, requested dispatch audio logs, requested Travis's personnel file under public records law. She hit send at 8:37 a.m. At 9:15, Paige Carlisle knocked on her door. Didn't wait for permission. Walked in, sat down, folder in her lap. "I've been assigned to review your complaint." Renee's jaw tightened. "Your investigations. This should go to Internal Affairs." IA referred it to me. They said it's a personnel dispute, not a criminal matter. I was arrested. That's criminal. Paige opened the folder, scanned the first page. "Your statement says you identified yourself as a commander. Officer Dane's report says you refused to comply with lawful orders and became verbally aggressive. The dashcam footage will show. Dashcam shows a traffic stop. What happened verbally is he said, she said." Renee leaned forward. "Then request Officer Vickers' body cam. He was backup. He would have captured our interaction." Paige flipped a page. "According to Equipment Log 19F, Officer Vickers' camera malfunctioned. No footage was recovered." Convenient. Equipment failures happen. "At the exact moment I identified myself as a superior officer?" Paige closed the folder. "Commander, I understand you're upset, but you need to see this from a different angle. Travis Dane has 3 years of service, clean record, clean, no prior complaints. You're asking me to believe he targeted you specifically. I'm asking you to investigate, pull dispatch logs. They'll confirm I requested verification. I'll review the available evidence, but I'm telling you now, without body cam, without witnesses, this becomes your word against his, and prosecutors don't like those cases." "I'm not asking prosecutors, I'm asking you." Paige stood. "I'll file my report within 30 days. In the meantime, I'd recommend you focus on your duties here. The precinct needs stability." She left. Renee sat alone, stared at the folder Paige had left on the corner of her desk. She opened it, read the first page. Travis's statement claimed she'd refused to exit the vehicle, claimed she'd raised her voice, claimed she'd made vague threats about consequences. All lies. All documented as fact in an official report that would follow her through every stage of this case. She closed the folder, pulled out her phone, called Janelle Wu. They'd worked together on a civil rights case 3 years ago, police brutality complaint that Janelle won with a jury verdict. Renee had testified as an expert witness. They'd stayed in touch. Janelle answered on the second ring. "Commander Harlow, I heard you had an interesting night." "Word travels." "In this town?" "Always." "You need representation?" "I need someone who understands how departments bury complaints." "I'm available, but I need to know, are you fighting this or managing it?" Renee looked at the framed commendation on her wall, the scratched car door, the stolen promotion, the officers who wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'm fighting." "Good. Come to my office tomorrow at 2. Bring everything. Timelines, photos, witnesses, recordings, anything you've got." Renee hung up, opened her desk drawer, pulled out a leather notebook she'd kept since her first day in patrol. She flipped to a blank page, wrote the date, wrote evidence log, Travis Dane incident, started listing every detail she could remember. At 11 a.m., her phone rang. Caller ID showed City HR Department. "Commander Harlow, this is Director Paulson. I'm calling to inform you that you've been removed from the Deputy Chief selection process." Renee set down her pen. "On what grounds?" "Pending criminal charges create a conflict. The selection committee feels it's prudent to pause your application until the matter is resolved. Pause or withdraw. The position will be filled within 60 days. If your charges are dismissed and you'd like to reapply in the next cycle." "When is the next cycle?" 18 months. Renee thanked her, hung up, opened her laptop, searched for employment attorneys, found 2 who specialized in law enforcement retaliation, emailed both. At noon, she received a call from the community center where she'd been scheduled to speak at a youth mentorship event. The coordinator's voice was apologetic, embarrassed. "Commander, we're going in a different direction this year. I've spoken at this event for 5 years. I know, but with the situation, the board feels it's best to bring in someone else, for optics." "Optics? I'm sorry, I really am. Maybe next year." Renee hung up before the coordinator could offer more hollow apologies. At 1 p.m., she stood for a briefing. Same room as 3 weeks ago, different energy. Officers filed in slowly, took seats in the back rows, left the front empty. She stood at the podium. 60 faces stared back, none of them friendly. "Morning briefing," she began. "First item, updated protocols for evidence handling." She got through 15 minutes before Lieutenant Becker interrupted from the back row. "Commander, can we address the elephant in the room?" Renee stopped mid-sentence. "Which elephant is that, Lieutenant?" "Your arrest. Officers are asking questions. They deserve answers." "I've filed a formal complaint with Internal Affairs. The matter is under investigation." "So you're saying Officer Dane was wrong?" "I'm saying the evidence will speak for itself." Becker stood, crossed his arms. "Travis Dane is a good cop. 3 years, 0 complaints. You're accusing him of what? Targeting you? Making up charges?" "I'm accusing him of violating procedure. General Order 4.12 requires verification when someone claims law enforcement status. He didn't verify. He arrested me instead. Maybe because you were uncooperative. I complied with every command. The dashcam will prove it. Dashcam shows you getting arrested. Doesn't show what you said." Renee met his eyes, kept her voice level. "Lieutenant, if you have concerns about my conduct, file a formal complaint. Otherwise, sit down and let me finish this briefing." Becker sat. But the room had shifted. Officers who'd been neutral now looked skeptical. Officers who'd been skeptical now looked hostile. She was losing them. Not because of facts, because of loyalty. Because Travis was one of them, and she was something else. She finished the briefing, dismissed the room, walked back to her office, found another note taped to her door. Handwritten, block letters. "Drop it. You're making this worse for everyone." No signature. She photographed it, added it to her evidence file. Didn't report it. What would she say? Someone left a threatening note in a building full of cops. The suspect pool was the entire precinct. Arraignment was 48 hours later. Renee arrived at the courthouse with Janelle Wu. They walked through metal detectors, past reporters who didn't recognize her yet, past clerks who shuffled papers and called case numbers. People versus Harlo, Courtroom 3. They entered. Prosecutor Martin Ortiz was already seated. Young, ambitious, the kind of deputy DA who took every case to trial because conviction rates mattered more than justice. Judge Patricia Hahn took the bench, late 50s, former prosecutor, reputation for skepticism toward defense claims. "Ms. Harlow, you're charged with resisting arrest under Penal Code Section 148A(1) and obstruction under Section 148.6. How do you plead?" Janelle stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." Ortiz rose. "The people request bail conditions. Defendant should surrender her service weapon and be placed on administrative leave pending trial." Janelle's voice sharpened. "My client is the victim of false arrest. She's a decorated police commander with 22 years of unblemished service. She has no flight risk, no criminal history. The prosecution's request is punitive, not precautionary." Judge Hahn glanced at the file. "Bail is set at own recognizance. Weapon surrender is denied. However, defendant will notify the court of any address changes. Pretrial conference is set for June 12th. Small victory. Renee kept her face neutral. Didn't smile. Didn't exhale with relief. Just nodded once. Outside the courtroom, Janelle pulled her aside. "Ortiz is going hard on this. He filed charges within 12 hours. That's fast. Someone wants you prosecuted." "Any idea who?" "Could be political. Could be personal, could be both. But here's what I know. He's not offering deals. He wants a trial. Then we give him one. Janelle studied her. Trials are expensive, emotionally and financially. And even if we win, the damage is done. Your reputation, your career, are already damaged. Now I'm just deciding whether to fight back or let them bury me quietly. Janelle nodded. Okay, then we fight. But we do it smart. I'm going to file a motion to compel discovery. We need that body cam footage. We need dispatch logs. We need everything. They spent the next 3 months in procedural warfare. Janelle filed motions. Ortiz objected. Judge Hahn ruled, back and forth. Back. Each hearing revealed more obstruction. Body cam footage from Travis? Activated after arrest, per his statement. Body cam footage from Shay? Malfunction documented in Equipment Log 19F. Dispatch audio? Available but requires authentication. Traffic stop data showing Travis's pattern? Personnel records exempt under Penal Code Section 832.7. Every request met with a barrier. Every barrier required a new motion. Every motion took weeks. In June, they had a hearing on Janelle's motion to compel. Judge Hahn presided. Ortiz argued. Your Honor, the defense is fishing. Officer Vickers' camera malfunctioned. That's documented. Officer Dayne's camera activated after the arrest. That's standard procedure. The dashcam footage shows the entire stop. What more does the defense need? Janelle stood. The defense needs proof that this wasn't a coordinated effort to hide evidence. Equipment Log 19F shows Officer Vickers' camera was functional during his previous shift. It malfunctioned precisely 8 minutes after Commander Harlow identified herself. That timing is suspicious. Ortiz spread his hands. Timing doesn't prove conspiracy. Cameras fail. The defense is asking this court to assume malice where simple equipment failure is documented. Judge Hahn looked at Janelle. Ms. Wu, your client is a police commander. Surely she understands that equipment malfunctions happen. She also understands when evidence is being concealed, Your Honor. Judge Hahn's expression hardened. Motion denied. Dashcam footage is sufficient. Trial is set for September 18th. Renee walked out of the courthouse. Janelle followed. She's protecting them. Janelle nodded. She's a former prosecutor. She's not going to assume cops lie. We're going to have to prove it at trial. Can we? Depends on what Travis says on the stand. If he commits to his story under oath, I can cross-examine. If he's smart, he'll hedge. Either way, we need something more. They spent July and August building the case. Janelle hired an IT consultant, former police department tech specialist. He reviewed Equipment Log 19F. Camera was functional at 1940, flagged as malfunctioning at 1950. That's 10 minutes. In that 10 minutes, someone manually disabled it. Can you prove that? Not without the physical device, but the pattern's clear. This wasn't random failure. Janelle pulled Travis's personnel file through public records requests. Found 3 prior complaints, all dismissed. May 2023, motorist alleged excessive force, IA finding, insufficient evidence. September 2023, motorist alleged racial profiling, IA finding, complainant failed to appear. January 2024, motorist alleged false arrest, IA finding, resolved informally. All 3 complainants were Black or Hispanic. All 3 cases dismissed without investigation. Renee reviewed the files. Her hands shook, not from fear, from rage. Travis Dane had a pattern. 3 complaints in 10 months, all buried. And now he'd arrested his own commanding officer because she'd dared to assert her rights. 1 week before trial, Travis confronted her. Renee was leaving Janelle's office. Late afternoon. August heat made the air thick. She walked to her car in the courthouse parking garage. Level 3, half empty. Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned. Travis Dane stood 15 feet away. No uniform. Jeans and a t-shirt. Hands in his pockets. Commander? She stopped, calculated distances. Exit was 30 yards. Security camera overhead. She'd checked its angle earlier. It would capture audio if she spoke loud enough. "Officer Dane, you shouldn't be here." He walked closer. 10 feet. 8. "I wanted to talk. Off the record." "There's no such thing as off the record when you're charged with false arrest. This trial's going to ruin your career. You know that, right?" She kept her voice firm, projected toward the camera. "Step back, Officer Dane." He stopped, but his eyes didn't. "I'm off duty. Just having a conversation." "You're engaging in witness intimidation. Step back or I will defend myself." He smiled. Not friendly, not warm, the smile of someone who knew he had institutional protection. "See you in court, ma'am." He turned, walked away. Renee pulled out her phone, emailed Janelle immediately. "Incident in courthouse garage. Travis Dane approached me. Security footage exists. Add to evidence file." Janelle responded within 5 minutes. "Filing motion for protective order. He's trying to scare you." He failed. But that night, alone in her apartment, Renee double-checked her locks, kept her personal weapon on the nightstand, slept in 2-hour shifts, because intimidation didn't have to succeed to do damage. It just had to make you wonder when the next encounter would happen, and whether you'd be ready. What Travis Dane doesn't know yet will destroy his career. But first, he has to take the stand. And when he does, the truth will come out in ways he never imagined. Don't miss what happens next. Trial began September 18th. Courtroom packed. Local media in the gallery. Off-duty officers filling the back rows. Community advocates on the left side. The room divided like a wedding. Prosecution's people on one side, defense on the other. Judge Hahn entered. Everyone stood. The bailiff called the case. People versus Harlo. Case number 24 CR6814. Jury selection had taken 3 days. Janelle used every peremptory challenge on former cops, prosecutors' relatives, and anyone who said, "Officers deserve the benefit of the doubt." The final jury, 8 women, 4 men. Mix of ages and backgrounds. 3 jurors who'd had negative interactions with police. 2 who had family in law enforcement. 7 who claimed they could be impartial. Ortiz stood for opening statement. Confident. Rehearsed. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about a routine traffic stop that spiraled out of control. Officer Travis Dane observed a vehicle with a malfunctioning taillight. He initiated a lawful stop. The defendant refused to comply. She escalated the situation by making false claims. She was arrested for obstruction. Everything else you'll hear is an attempt to avoid accountability by playing the victim." He sat. Janelle rose, didn't approach the jury, stayed at the defense table, made them lean in to hear her. "Members of the jury, you're going to watch dashcam footage of a woman who complied with every single command, who narrated her movements to avoid misunderstandings, who stood with her hands visible while the officer ran her license. She didn't resist, she didn't flee, she didn't raise her voice." Pause. Let it breathe. "What you won't see is the 10 minutes of missing footage. What you won't hear is the audio that was conveniently erased. And what you don't know yet, what Officer Dane didn't know that night, is who that woman actually is. By the end of this trial, you'll understand that this wasn't a traffic stop. This was retaliation." Ortiz called his first witness, Travis Dane. Travis took the stand, uniform crisp, posture straight. He swore in, sat, met the jury's eyes with practiced sincerity. Ortiz began gently. "Officer Dane, how long have you been with the Metro Police Department?" 3 years. "Any prior complaints or disciplinary actions?" "No, sir." Lie. But Janelle couldn't object yet, not until cross. "Tell the jury what happened on February 14th. Travis shifted slightly, looked at the jury instead of Ortiz. "I was on patrol around 7:40 p.m. I observed a sedan with a non-functional taillight. I initiated a traffic stop. The driver complied initially, pulled over, provided documents. But when I asked her to exit the vehicle, she became argumentative. What did she say? She questioned my authority, asked why she was being stopped, claimed to be a police commander. Did she provide proof of that claim? No, she had no badge, no credentials, just a driver's license. What did you do? I requested verification through dispatch. And what did dispatch tell you? Travis hesitated. Half a second, enough for Renee to notice. They indicated there was a Commander Harlow in the system, but I'd encountered individuals impersonating officers before. I proceeded with caution. Meaning? I asked her to exit the vehicle so I could verify her identity in person. She refused. She refused? She became verbally aggressive, told me I'd regret this, that I'd be disciplined. Renee's hands tightened in her lap. Janelle touched her wrist, gentle, steadying. Travis continued. I made the decision to arrest her for obstruction. She was interfering with my duties, making threats. Ortiz nodded. Officer, did you use excessive force during this arrest? No. I placed her in handcuffs using standard procedure. She complained about her shoulder, so I adjusted the cuffs. She was compliant after that. Why didn't you activate your body cam sooner? I activated it as soon as I determined an arrest was necessary. Before that, it was a routine traffic stop. Ortiz smiled. No further questions. Judge Hahn looked at Janelle. Cross-examination? Janelle stood, moved to the podium. Set down a single manila folder. Didn't open it yet. Officer Dane, you testified that my client refused to exit the vehicle. Is that correct? Yes. Let's watch the dashcam footage. She nodded to the bailiff. The screen lit up. Footage played. Renee's voice, calm and clear. Of course. 5 seconds later, she stepped out. Janelle paused the video. That's 5 seconds from your command to her compliance. Is that what you call refusal? Travis's jaw tightened. She hesitated. For 5 seconds. To ensure she understood your command, correct? She asked questions instead of complying immediately. She asked for clarification, which is her right under Miranda and Terry Stop doctrines. You're familiar with those, officer? Yes. And you're also familiar with General Order 4.12, which Commander Harlow mentioned during the stop? I am now. But you weren't on February 14th. I knew the policy. I just didn't recall the specific number. The policy states that when someone claims law enforcement affiliation, you must verify through dispatch before making custodial decisions, correct? Correct. And you did verify through dispatch? Yes. What did dispatch tell you? Silence. Travis looked at Ortiz. Ortiz kept his face blank. They confirmed a Commander Harlow existed in the system. Existed? Or that the woman you'd stopped was Commander Harlow? They confirmed the name matched. And what did you do with that information? I still had reasonable suspicion that she might be impersonating. Janelle cut him off. Let me play you the dispatch audio. She nodded again. A voice filled the courtroom. Dispatcher's voice, flat and professional. Unit 47, this is dispatch. Commander Renee Harlow, Badge 1147, District 9 Command. Confirmed active duty, over. Unit 47 copies. Janelle paused the audio. Dispatch didn't say someone named Harlow exists. They said Commander Renee Harlow, confirmed active duty. Those are different things, aren't they? Travis's face hardened. I made a judgment call based on what? Dispatch confirmed her identity. Your own policy required you to proceed with caution and respect. Instead, you arrested her. Why? She was obstructing my investigation. By standing with her hands visible? By complying with your commands? By making threats about consequences. Show me on the dashcam where she made threats. Ortiz stood. Objection. The dashcam doesn't have audio of their entire conversation. Janelle turned to the judge. Exactly, Your Honor. Because Officer Vickers' body cam, which would have captured that conversation, conveniently malfunctioned 8 minutes into the stop. Judge Hahn frowned. "Move on, Ms. Wu." Janelle looked back at Travis. "Officer Dane, have you ever been the subject of a civilian complaint?" Ortiz rose. "Objection. Relevance." "Goes to credibility, Your Honor." "Overruled." "Answer the question, officer." Travis swallowed. "I've had complaints filed. They were all dismissed." "How many?" "I don't recall exactly." Janelle opened her folder, pulled out 3 sheets. "Let me refresh your memory. May 2023, excessive force complaint. September 2023, racial profiling complaint. January 2024, false arrest complaint. All 3 complainants were people of color. All 3 complaints dismissed without investigation. Do you recall those?" "They were unfounded." "Or they were buried. You arrested my client, a black woman, without cause. You ignored dispatch confirmation. You falsified your report to claim she was uncooperative. This isn't your first time, is it?" Ortiz stood. "Objection. Counsel is testifying. Sustained. Ms. Wu, ask questions. Don't make speeches." Janelle didn't break eye contact with Travis. "Officer Dane, did you know that the woman you arrested was your commanding officer?" "Not at the time." "But you do now?" "Yes." "And knowing that, do you stand by your decision to arrest her?" Travis met her eyes. Didn't blink. "I followed procedure. If I made an error, it was in good faith." Good faith doesn't include ignoring dispatch confirmation. Good faith doesn't include filing a false report. Good faith doesn't include intimidating a witness in a courthouse parking garage 1 week before trial. Ortiz shot to his feet. "Objection." Judge Hahn's gavel cracked. "Sustained. Ms. Wu, that's enough. Do you have further questions?" "No, Your Honor. This witness has said enough." Janelle sat. Travis stepped down. His face was flushed. His confidence had cracked. Not shattered, but cracked. And that was enough for now. Ortiz called Shay Vickers next. Shay took the stand, looked nervous, kept glancing at Travis in the gallery. "Officer Vickers, you arrived as backup on February 14th. What did you observe?" "Officer Dane had the subject in custody. She appeared calm, no issues." "Did Officer Dane mention that the subject claimed to be a police commander?" "He said she'd made some claims. I didn't hear the specifics." "Why didn't your bodycam capture the interaction?" "Equipment malfunction. It's in the log." Janelle rose for cross. "Officer Vickers, equipment log 19F shows your camera was functional at 1940. It malfunctioned at 1950. That's 10 minutes. What happened in those 10 minutes?" "I don't know. It just stopped working." "Did you attempt to restart it?" "I don't recall." "Did you report the malfunction immediately?" "I logged it after my shift." 6 hours later?" "I was busy with other calls." "Too busy to report a malfunction that destroyed evidence in a false arrest case?" Ortiz objected. Judge sustained. But the jury had heard it. Janelle sat. Ortiz rested his case. Judge Hahn looked at the clock. "We'll resume tomorrow with the defense case. Court is adjourned." Renee stood, walked out with Janelle. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed. Janelle shielded her. "No comment. Let the evidence speak." They reached Janelle's car, got in, sat in silence. "You did good," Janelle said finally. "We haven't won yet." "No. But we cracked Travis. The jury saw him lie. Tomorrow, we finish this." Renee nodded, looked out the window, watched the courthouse fade in the rearview mirror. Tomorrow she'd take the stand. Tomorrow, she'd reveal who she really was. Tomorrow, the system that had tried to bury her would have to face the truth. And she was ready. End of Part 1. Part 2 will reveal Commander Harlow's testimony, the explosive courtroom confrontation, and whether justice can survive when the system protects its own. The verdict will shock you, the aftermath will haunt you, and the final twist will leave one question. Can you ever truly win when the system itself is broken? The next morning, Renee arrived at the courthouse 40 minutes early. Janelle was already there, briefcase open on a bench outside Courtroom 3, reviewing notes under fluorescent lights that hummed too loud. "You ready?" Renee sat beside her, smoothed her blazer, navy blue, professional, the same outfit she wore to community meetings when she needed people to see her as approachable, not threatening. "I've testified hundreds of times. Expert witness, use of force cases, officer-involved shootings. This isn't different." Janelle closed her folder. "Yes, it is. Those times you were helping the prosecution. Today, you're the defendant. The jury will watch how you handle pressure. Ortiz will try to rattle you, make you angry, emotional, defensive. I know. So don't give him anything. Answer the question. Nothing more. If he asks yes or no, say yes or no. Don't explain unless I ask you to." Renee nodded. She'd coached witnesses the same way. Keep it simple. Stick to facts. Don't volunteer information that can be twisted. The courtroom doors opened. They entered. Same gallery as yesterday. Media on the left, off-duty officers on the right, community advocates scattered throughout. Travis Dane sat behind the prosecution table, arms crossed, watching her walk to the defense side. Judge Han took the bench at 9 a.m. sharp. "Ms. Wu, call your first witness." Janelle stood. This was it. The moment they'd been building toward for 7 months. The moment that would either vindicate Renee or destroy what remained of her career. "The defense calls Renee Harlow." Renee stood, walked to the witness stand. Every eye in the courtroom tracked her movement. She placed her hand on the Bible. The bailiff's voice was flat, procedural. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." "State your name and occupation for the record." She met the jury's eyes, spoke clearly, no hesitation. "Renee Harlow, Commander, District 9, Metro Police Department, badge number 1147. The courtroom erupted. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Someone in the back row swore. A reporter's pen clattered to the floor. Travis Dane's face drained of color. His mouth opened slightly, closed, opened again. Judge Han's gavel cracked 3 times. "Order! I will have order in this court." The noise subsided to murmurs. Janelle waited. Let the moment breathe. Let the jury process what they'd just heard. The woman who'd been arrested for obstruction was a police commander. The woman Travis Dane had handcuffed and thrown in the back of his patrol car outranked him. Prosecutor Ortiz sat frozen. He'd known, the discovery process had revealed Renee's position, but hearing her state it under oath in front of the jury changed everything. This wasn't a civilian claiming mistreatment. This was a commanding officer testifying that one of her own officers had arrested her unlawfully. Janelle approached the witness stand. Her voice was calm, measured. "Commander Harlow, how long have you served with the Metro Police Department?" 22 years. I started as a patrol officer in District 5. Worked patrol for 8 years, then moved to investigations. Made detective in 2012, sergeant in 2016, lieutenant in 2019. I was promoted to commander in 2021. What are your duties as commander of District 9? I oversee all patrol operations. Approximately 120 officers report through my chain of command. I'm responsible for scheduling, disciplinary actions, policy implementation, and community relations. Does Officer Travis Dane report to your chain of command? Yes. He's assigned to evening patrol. I've supervised his performance reviews and conduct his annual evaluations. Janelle moved to the evidence table, picked up a document. I'm showing you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 12. Can you identify this? Renee examined the paper. That's the attendance roster from a briefing I conducted on January 22nd, 3 weeks before my arrest. Officer Dane's signature is on line 17. What was the subject of that briefing? General Order 4.12, the new policy requiring officers to verify law enforcement affiliation through dispatch before making custodial decisions. Did you address Officer Dane directly during that briefing? Yes. He was using his phone instead of paying attention. I called on him to explain the policy. He gave the correct answer, verify through dispatch, but his tone suggested he wasn't taking it seriously. Ortiz stood. Objection. The witness is speculating about Officer Dane's state of mind. Sustained. Strike the last sentence. The jury will disregard. But the jury had heard it. Travis had been warned about this exact policy. 3 weeks later, he'd violated it. Janelle continued. Commander Harlow, on February 14th, you were driving home from a community event. What were you wearing? Civilian clothes, a blazer, blouse, and slacks. No uniform, no badge visible. Why no badge? I was off duty. When I'm off duty, I prefer to separate my professional and personal life. Some commanders carry their badge everywhere. I don't. When Officer Dane stopped you, what was your first reaction? I checked my speed and my mirrors. I wasn't speeding. Both taillights were functional. I'd had the car inspected 4 days prior. I assumed it was a routine check. Did you comply with Officer Dane's commands? Yes, every single one. I kept my hands on the steering wheel. Announced my movements before reaching for my registration. Exited the vehicle when instructed. Kept my hands visible at all times. When did you identify yourself as a police commander? After he claimed my taillight was malfunctioning. I told him both lights were functional, and I informed him that I was Commander Harlow from District 9. I gave him my badge number and asked him to verify through dispatch. How did he respond? He said my ID didn't say Commander. I explained that my personnel credentials were at the precinct, but dispatch could confirm my identity. He ignored me and ordered me to turn around for handcuffing. Did you resist? No. I turned around, placed my hands behind my back, complied completely. What happened when he applied the handcuffs? Renee's jaw tightened. The memory was physical, sharp. He closed them too tight. The metal cut into my wrist bones. Then he jerked my arms upward, hard. My shoulders aren't as flexible as they used to be. The movement caused immediate pain in my right rotator cuff. Did you complain? I exhaled sharply, that's all. I didn't want to give him a reason to escalate further. What happened next? He gripped my upper arm and steered me toward his patrol car. His fingers dug into the muscle hard enough to leave bruises. When he opened the back door, he placed his palm on top of my head and forced me down. Not guided, forced. My neck bent at an angle that made my vision blur. Someone in the gallery whispered. Judge Hahn glared. Silence returned. Janelle picked up another document. Defense Exhibit 19. Can you identify this? That's the medical report from the booking nurse. It documents soft tissue damage to my right shoulder and bruising on my upper left arm. The photographs were taken at 11:15 p.m., approximately 3 hours after the arrest. Janelle displayed the photos on the courtroom screen. Purple-yellow bruises, finger-shaped, circling Renee's bicep. The jury leaned forward. Several faces tightened. Commander, after Officer Dane arrested you, did he verify your identity through dispatch? He radioed for backup. I heard him tell Officer Vickers that I was an uncooperative motorist claiming to be law enforcement. I requested that he contact dispatch to confirm. He turned up the radio volume to drown me out. Did dispatch ever confirm your identity to Officer Dane? Yes. I obtained the dispatch logs through a public records request. At 1946, dispatch told Unit 47, Officer Dane's unit, that Commander Renee Harlow, Badge 1147, District 9, was confirmed active duty. Janelle nodded to the bailiff. Audio played. The dispatcher's voice filled the courtroom, crisp and clear. Unit 47, this is dispatch. Commander Renee Harlow, Badge 1147, District 9 Command. Confirmed active duty. Over. Pause. Static. Unit 47 copies. The audio stopped. Janelle turned back to Renee. After dispatch confirmed your identity, Officer Dane proceeded with the arrest anyway. Is that correct? Yes. Why do you think he did that? Ortiz shot to his feet. Objection. Speculation. Sustained, Janelle rephrased. What did Officer Dane say when you asked why he was arresting you after dispatch confirmation? He said I was obstructing his investigation. When I pointed out that I'd complied with every command, he told me to remain silent. Did you know Officer Dane before February 14th? Yes. He'd been assigned to District 9 for 18 months. I'd reviewed his performance twice. Both reviews noted that he had strong enforcement numbers but struggled with de-escalation techniques. Had you ever disciplined him? No, but I'd recommended additional training after a civilian complained about his conduct during a traffic stop in December 2023. What was the nature of that complaint? The motorist, a Hispanic man, alleged that Officer Dane used excessive force during a routine stop. The complaint was investigated by Detective Paige Carlisle and dismissed as unfounded. The same Detective Carlisle who dismissed your complaint? Yes. Janelle moved closer to the jury. Commander Harlow, after your arrest, what did you do? I documented everything. I took photographs of my injuries. I obtained my vehicle inspection report, showing both taillights were functional 4 days before the stop. I requested copies of the dashcam footage, the dispatch logs, and the bodycam footage from both Officer Dane and Officer Vickers. Why did you request bodycam footage? Because bodycam footage would have captured our entire verbal interaction. It would have shown that I identified myself immediately, that I didn't make threats, that I complied with every command. And were you able to obtain that footage? No. Officer Vickers' bodycam was listed as malfunctioning. Officer Dane's bodycam was only activated after the arrest, according to his statement. How convenient. Ortiz stood. Objection. Judge Hahn sighed. Sustained. Ms. Wu, save the commentary for closing. Janelle returned to the defense table, picked up a thick folder. I'm showing you Defense Exhibit 27. What is this? That's my personnel file request, dated February 17th, 3 days after my arrest. I requested Officer Dane's complete service record, including any prior complaints, disciplinary actions, and commendations. What did you find? 3 prior civilian complaints, all from motorists of color, all dismissed by Internal Affairs without substantive investigation. How did those complaints compare to your experience? The patterns were identical. Janelle set down the folder. Commander, you've been a police officer for 22 years. You've seen how the system handles complaints. Based on your experience, do you believe those prior complaints were properly investigated? Ortiz rose. Objection. Calls for opinion beyond the scope of expertise. Judge Hahn looked at Janelle. Your Honor, Commander Harlow supervises internal affairs investigations in her district. She's eminently qualified to assess whether an investigation was thorough. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Commander. Renee looked at the jury. No. Those investigations were inadequate. When a complaint alleges excessive force or racial bias, proper protocol requires interviewing witnesses, reviewing all available footage, and documenting the officer's history. None of that happened in Officer Dane's cases. The investigations consisted of reading his report, asking if he followed procedure, and closing the file when he said yes. Why do you think that happened? Because the system protects officers who generate arrests. Officer Dane's numbers looked good on paper. High stops, high citations, high arrests. Supervisors didn't want to discipline someone who made the department look productive, even if his methods were questionable. Did that same system protect Officer Dane when he arrested you? Yes. Detective Carlisle dismissed my complaint within 2 weeks. She claimed it was he said she said, even though dispatch logs and dashcam footage supported my account. She never interviewed Officer Vickers. She never requested the bodycam footage until after it was conveniently logged as malfunctioning. Janelle nodded. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Hahn looked at Ortiz. Cross-examination? Ortiz stood. He approached slowly. Strategy. Appear reasonable, not aggressive. Make Renee seem defensive. Commander Harlow, you expect this jury to believe that Officer Dane arrested you, his commanding officer, without cause. I don't expect anything. The evidence speaks for itself. But isn't it possible Officer Dane simply didn't recognize you? You were in civilian clothes, no badge, no uniform. He verified my identity through dispatch. Dispatch confirmed who I was. He arrested me anyway. Or maybe he believed you were impersonating a police officer. That happens, doesn't it? Rarely. And when it does, dispatch confirmation resolves the issue. Unless the officer has reasonable suspicion to believe the person is lying. Based on what? My calm demeanor? My compliance with his commands? My willingness to provide documentation? Ortiz shifted tactics. You testified that Officer Dane struggled with de-escalation. Isn't it possible you were uncooperative in ways the dashcam didn't capture? The dashcam captured everything from the moment he approached my window. If I'd been uncooperative, it would have been visible. What about before he approached? Did you make any gestures? Any facial expressions that might have been perceived as hostile? I kept my hands on the steering wheel and waited. That's all. You also testified that you filed complaints against other officers. How many complaints have you filed in your career? Janelle stood. Objection? Relevance? Ortiz faced the judge. Goes to credibility, Your Honor. If the witness has a pattern of filing complaints, it suggests she may be oversensitive to routine police procedures. Judge Hahn frowned but nodded. I'll allow it. Answer, Commander. Renee's voice didn't waver. I've filed approximately 15 formal complaints in 22 years. All were for substantive violations: use of excessive force, falsification of reports, theft of evidence, sexual harassment. 12 were sustained. 3 were resolved through retraining. 12 sustained complaints. That's a high number, isn't it? It's proportional to the number of officers I've supervised. When officers violate policy, I document it. That's my job. Or maybe you're difficult to work with. Maybe you set impossible standards. Janelle rose. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Ortiz tried again. Commander, how many of your officers have filed complaints about you? Renee's eyes narrowed slightly. 2. Both were dismissed as retaliatory after I disciplined those officers for misconduct. So you've been accused of misconduct yourself? I've been accused by officers who were upset about being held accountable. The accusations were investigated and found to be baseless. Just like Officer Dane's prior complaints were found baseless? No. Officer Dane's complaints were dismissed without investigation. Mine were investigated thoroughly. There's a difference. Ortiz paused, checked his notes, regrouped. Commander, you applied for a promotion to Deputy Chief. Is that correct? Yes. And you were denied. The process was paused due to pending criminal charges. The charges we're litigating right now. Charges that stem from your arrest by Officer Dane. Charges that are false. Or charges that reflect what actually happened. You refused lawful commands and obstructed an officer doing his job. Janelle stood. Objection. Counsel is testifying. Sustained. Mr. Ortiz, ask questions. Ortiz stepped closer. Commander Harlow, isn't it true that you're pursuing this case because you're angry about your stalled career? That you're using your rank to retaliate against a junior officer who didn't give you special treatment? Renee's voice went cold, controlled. I'm pursuing this case because I was unlawfully arrested, because Officer Dane violated procedure, because the system buried his misconduct 3 times before, and I won't let it happen again. You won't let it happen, or you can't accept that maybe, just maybe, you were in the wrong? I was handcuffed, thrown in a patrol car, and booked like a criminal. My shoulder was injured. My reputation was damaged. My career was stalled. All because an officer ignored dispatch confirmation and proceeded with an unlawful arrest. That's not being in the wrong. That's being a victim of abuse of power. The truth is out. But will it be enough to overcome a system designed to protect its own? The verdict is coming, and what happens next will determine whether justice is possible when the accused and the accuser wear the same badge. Stay with us. Ortiz had no response. He returned to his table, sat. No further questions. Judge Hahn looked at the clock. We'll break for lunch. Court resumes at 1:30. During the break, Renee sat with Janelle in a conference room adjacent to the courthouse. Sandwiches from a deli down the street sat untouched on the table. "You did well," Janelle said. "You stayed calm, didn't take the bait." He tried to make me sound vindictive. He failed. The jury saw a professional who documented everything and followed procedure. That's what matters. Renee rubbed her right shoulder. The old injury ached in cold courtrooms. "What's next?" "I'm calling the IT specialist to testify about the bodycam malfunction. Then I'm introducing the inspection report for your car. After that, we rest. Ortiz will do rebuttal if he has anything, then closing arguments." "How long until verdict?" "Depends on the jury. Could be hours, could be days." Renee nodded, picked at her sandwich. Couldn't eat. Her stomach was a knot of tension that wouldn't loosen until this was over. They returned to the courtroom at 1:30. Janelle called her next witness. The defense calls Marcus Chen. A man in his 40s took the stand. Wire-rimmed glasses, button-down shirt, former police IT specialist, now working as an independent consultant. Janelle established his credentials quickly. "Mr. Chen, you reviewed equipment log 19F regarding Officer Vickers' body cam. What did you find?" "The log shows that Officer Vickers' camera was fully functional during his shift prior to the incident. At 19:40 on February 14th, the camera was recording. At 19:50, it was flagged as malfunctioning. That's a 10-minute window." "Is it common for body cams to malfunction mid-shift?" "Uncommon. These devices are designed to run for entire shifts, 8 to 12 hours. A sudden failure 10 minutes into a critical incident raises red flags." "What kind of red flags?" "It suggests manual deactivation. Someone turned it off or disabled the recording function." Ortiz objected. "Speculation, Your Honor," Janelle responded. "Mr. Chen is testifying as an expert based on his analysis of the equipment log." Judge Hahn nodded. "I'll allow it. Continue." Marcus adjusted his glasses. Based on the timestamps, the camera stopped recording precisely 8 minutes after Commander Harlow identified herself to Officer Dane. If this were a random equipment failure, we'd expect it to occur at any point during the shift. The timing, immediately following a controversial claim, suggests deliberate action. "Can you prove someone manually disabled the camera?" "Not without examining the physical device, but the department never conducted that examination. The camera was logged as malfunctioning and placed in storage. No diagnostic test, no repair attempt, just filed away." "Why would the department do that?" "Because a diagnostic test would reveal whether the failure was mechanical or manual. If it was manual, someone would face discipline. Easier to call it a malfunction and move on." Ortiz cross-examined briefly, trying to poke holes in the theory, but Marcus held firm. The timing was too convenient. The lack of follow-up investigation was suspicious. The jury took notes. Janelle's next witness was the mechanic who'd inspected Renee's car on February 10th. "Mr. Torres, you inspected Commander Harlow's vehicle 4 days before her arrest. What did you find regarding the taillights?" "Both taillights were fully functional. Brake lights, turn signals, reverse lights, all working perfectly. I noted it in my report." "Is it possible they malfunctioned between February 10th and February 14th? "Possible, but unlikely. Taillights don't just fail randomly. Usually it's a blown bulb or corroded wiring. I would have noticed signs of wear." "Did you notice any signs of wear?" "None. The bulbs were relatively new. The wiring was clean. No issues at all." Ortiz tried to suggest that a bulb could have blown in 4 days. Torres countered that blown bulbs leave visual evidence: blackened glass, broken filament. Officer Dane hadn't documented any of that. Janelle rested her case. Ortiz called one rebuttal witness, Sergeant Miles Kendrick, the department's policy expert. "Sergeant Kendrick, is it standard procedure for officers to activate body cams before or after making an arrest decision?" "Officers have discretion. Some activate immediately. Others activate once they've determined an arrest is necessary." "So Officer Dane wasn't violating policy by waiting to activate his camera?" "Correct. Policy requires activation during enforcement actions. Traffic stops can be enforcement actions, but they can also be warnings. The officer uses judgment. Janelle's cross-examination was brief. Sergeant Kendrick, General Order 4.12 requires officers to verify law enforcement affiliation before making custodial decisions, correct? Correct. Officer Dane verified Commander Harlow's identity through dispatch. Dispatch confirmed she was a commander. Did Officer Dane follow policy by arresting her anyway? Miles hesitated. That depends on whether he had reasonable suspicion to believe she was impersonating. Answer the question. Did he follow policy? The situation was ambiguous. Yes or no? Based solely on the dispatch confirmation, no, he should have proceeded with caution. Janelle sat. Ortiz rested his case. Judge Hahn looked at both attorneys. Closing arguments tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., court is adjourned. That night, Renee barely slept. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of her testimony. Had she said enough? Too much? Would the jury believe her, or would they side with Travis, the young officer just doing his job? At 6 a.m., she gave up trying to sleep, made coffee, sat at her kitchen table, reviewed her notes one final time. Janelle had told her not to attend closing arguments if she didn't want to. Sometimes it's easier to wait in the hall, she'd said. But Renee needed to be there, needed to see the jury's faces, needed to hear whether Ortiz would twist her testimony into something unrecognizable. 9 a.m., Courtroom 3, full gallery again. Renee sat at the defense table. Janelle stood. Members of the jury, 7 months ago, Commander Renee Harlow was driving home after a community event. She was pulled over by Officer Travis Dane for a taillight that wasn't malfunctioning. She complied with every command. She identified herself as a police commander and provided her badge number. Dispatch confirmed her identity, and Officer Dane arrested her anyway. Janelle paused. Let the words settle. Why? Because she dared to assert her rights? Because she questioned his authority? Because she's a black woman who didn't fit his expectation of what a commander should look like? She gestured to the evidence table. The dashcam shows compliance. The dispatch logs show confirmation. The medical records show injury. The bodycam malfunction shows cover-up. Every piece of evidence points to one conclusion. Officer Travis Dane abused his power, and when Commander Harlow filed a complaint, the system protected him. Another pause. This case isn't about one traffic stop. It's about a pattern. 3 prior complaints, all dismissed, all from people of color. Officer Dane has learned that he can escalate without consequences, that he can use force without accountability, that he can arrest his own commanding officer and face no repercussions. Janelle's voice hardened. Until now. You have the power to hold him accountable. You have the power to say that badges don't grant immunity, that rank doesn't protect misconduct, that justice applies to everyone, even police officers who think they're above the law. She sat. Ortiz stood, straightened his tie, approached the jury with a somber expression. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense wants you to believe this is a conspiracy, that Officer Dane, Officer Vickers, Detective Carlisle, and Sergeant Kendrick all coordinated to frame Commander Harlow. But the simpler explanation is the truth. Officer Dane made a lawful stop. The defendant escalated the situation, and now she's using her rank to retaliate. He picked up the dashcam screenshot. Look at this image. A woman standing beside her car. Hands visible. Calm. The defense says this proves compliance. I say it proves nothing. What happened before this image? What was said that the dashcam didn't capture? We don't know, because the defendant's own testimony is the only evidence of her alleged compliance. Ortiz set down the image. The defense also claims Officer Dane ignored dispatch confirmation, but Sergeant Kendrick testified that officers have discretion. If Officer Dane had reasonable suspicion, based on the defendant's lack of credentials, her argumentative tone, her refusal to comply initially, he was justified in proceeding with the arrest. He gestured toward Travis in the gallery. Officer Dane has 3 years of service. No disciplinary actions, No sustained complaints. He's not a rogue cop. He's a young officer trying to do his job. And now his career is being destroyed because he arrested someone who happened to outrank him. Ortiz's voice softened. Don't let sympathy for the defendant cloud your judgment. Yes, she's a commander. Yes, she has 22 years of service. But that doesn't mean she's above the law. If she obstructed an officer, and the evidence shows she did, then she should be held accountable just like anyone else. He returned to his table. The people ask that you return a verdict of guilty. Thank you. Judge Hahn instructed the jury, explained the burden of proof, defined reasonable doubt, sent them to deliberate. Renee waited. 4 hours passed, then 6, then 8. At 5 p.m., the jury sent a note. Can we review the dispatch audio again? Judge Hahn called them back. Replayed the audio. They returned to deliberations. At 7:30 p.m., another note. We've reached a verdict. The courtroom reassembled. Renee's hands were clammy. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Janelle squeezed her wrist under the table. The jury filed in. Faces unreadable. The foreperson, a woman in her 50s, a retired schoolteacher, stood. Judge Hahn's voice was steady. Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of resisting arrest under Penal Code Section 148A, 1, how do you find? We find the defendant not guilty. Renee's breath caught. Janelle's hand tightened. On the charge of obstruction under Penal Code Section 148.6, how do you find? We find the defendant not guilty. The courtroom exhaled collectively. Someone in the gallery clapped. Judge Hahn's gavel silenced it. The defendant is acquitted on all charges. Ms. Harlow, you're free to go. Renee stood. Her knees felt weak. Janelle hugged her. Brief, professional. The jury filed out. Several jurors glanced at her. One nodded. Small acknowledgement. Solidarity. Ortiz gathered his files quickly, didn't make eye contact. Travis Dane sat in the gallery, face pale, staring at the floor. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Microphones thrust forward. Commander Harlow, how does it feel to be vindicated? Do you plan to sue the department? What happens to Officer Dane now? Janelle stepped forward. Commander Harlow is grateful for the jury's careful attention to the evidence. She has no further comment at this time. They pushed through the crowd, reached Janelle's car, got in, sat in silence as the engine idled. You won, Janelle said finally. Renee shook her head. I survived. That's not the same as winning. 2 weeks later, the police chief held a press conference. Renee watched from her office. The chief stood at a podium, flanked by the mayor and the police union president. In light of recent events, the Metro Police Department is conducting an administrative review of the incident involving Commander Harlow and Officer Dane. We take allegations of misconduct seriously. Officer Dane has been placed on paid administrative leave pending the outcome of this review. Paid leave, not suspension, not termination. Paid leave, a vacation with benefits, while the department waited for public attention to fade. The chief continued. Additionally, we are implementing mandatory bias training for all officers and requiring quarterly audits of traffic stop data to ensure equitable enforcement. Bias training, a 4-hour seminar where officers would watch videos, sign attendance sheets, and forget everything by the next shift. Quarterly audits that would generate reports no one read. Renee turned off the screen. Her phone rang. Internal Affairs. Commander, this is Lieutenant Shaw from IA. I wanted to inform you that our investigation into Officer Dane is ongoing. We anticipate findings within 60 days. What's the scope of the investigation? We're reviewing the February 14th incident and examining his prior complaint history. What about Officer Vickers? Detective Carlisle? Officer Vickers is being interviewed regarding the bodycam malfunction. Detective Carlisle's handling of your complaint is under review. And the outcome? That depends on the evidence. But I want you to know, we're taking this seriously. Renee thanked him, hung up, knew better than to hope. 60 days later, IA released its findings. Officer Travis Dane violated General Order 4.12 by failing to verify Commander Harlow's identity appropriately before arrest. Recommended discipline, 30-day suspension without pay, and mandatory retraining. However, Officer Dane has elected to resign in lieu of disciplinary action. Resignation accepted. Officer Vickers. No evidence of intentional bodycam deactivation. Equipment malfunction documented per protocol. No disciplinary action recommended. Detective Paige Carlisle. Investigation of Commander Harlow's complaint met minimum standards. No policy violations identified. Reassignment to cold case unit recommended for workload management purposes. Sergeant Miles Kendrick. Delayed processing of evidence requests created administrative burden. Counseling provided. Written reprimand placed in file. Lieutenant Ford Becker, retired prior to completion of review. No further action. Renee read the report 3 times, then filed it. Travis Dane was gone, but not terminated, not disciplined. He'd resigned, which meant his record remained clean. He could apply to other departments, get hired, wear a badge again, and the system would protect him all over again. Vickers faced no consequences. The body cam malfunction was accepted as fact, despite Marcus Chen's testimony. Paige Carlisle was transferred laterally. Same rank, same pay, just a different desk. Miles Kendrick got counseling, a slap on the wrist for obstruction that had delayed justice for months. Ford Becker retired with full pension, escaped accountability entirely. The system had adjusted just enough to survive, but it hadn't changed. 3 months after the verdict, the Department of Justice called. Commander Harlow, this is Attorney Williams from the Civil Rights Division. We're opening a preliminary inquiry into Metro PD's traffic stop practices. Your case has been flagged as part of a potential pattern. We'd like your cooperation. Renee sat up straighter. What kind of inquiry? Preliminary. We're reviewing traffic stop data, complaint records, and use of force incidents to determine whether a pattern or practice investigation is warranted. Pattern or practice. That's a full civil rights investigation. If the preliminary inquiry supports it, yes, but we're not there yet. We're gathering information. What do you need from me? Your testimony, your documentation, and your patience. These investigations take years. Renee closed her eyes. Years. Federal investigations are thorough. We can't promise immediate results, but we can promise accountability, eventually. Eventually. The word that defined every reform effort, every complaint, every promise. Renee agreed to cooperate, provided her files, testified to federal investigators, watched as they requested thousands of pages of records from the department, and waited. 4 months after the trial, Renee received a call from Chief Warren. Commander, the selection committee has reconvened. They'd like to offer you the position of Deputy Chief of Professional Standards. Professional standards, oversight, accountability, internal affairs investigations, discipline recommendations. Why professional standards specifically? Your case highlighted gaps in our accountability systems. The committee believes you're uniquely qualified to address those gaps. Translation. It was a political move. Optics. The department needed to show it was taking reform seriously. Promoting the commander who'd been wrongfully arrested sent a message. Whether that message was sincere or performative remained to be seen. I accept. Excellent. You'll start in 2 weeks. Congratulations, Deputy Chief. Renee hung up, stared at her office. This promotion, 3 years delayed, achieved through a nightmare, was supposed to feel like victory. Instead, it felt like leverage, a tool she could use, a position she could occupy to change things from the inside, if change was possible. 5 months after the trial, Renee sat in her new office on the 3rd floor. Larger space, better view, a title that carried weight, Deputy Chief of Professional Standards, She reviewed cases, dozens of them, complaints that had been dismissed, use of force incidents that had been justified without investigation.
Officers with multiple complaints still on patrol. She flagged patterns, sent recommendations up the chain, pushed for thorough investigations. Some were sustained, most were watered down by the time they reached the chief's desk. One afternoon she pulled Travis Dane's complete file, official copy, every page. On page 47 she found a note, bodycam footage, February 14th, 1942 to 2002, archived per General Order 8.14. Access restricted. Section marked redacted. Requires Deputy Chief authorization to release. She had that authorization now. She submitted a formal request. 3 days later, the IT department responded. Deputy Chief Harlow, archived footage from case reference 24-0214-TD has been reviewed. 10-minute segment, 1952 to 2002, is corrupted. Data unrecoverable. Notation in archive log indicates file corruption occurred on February 21st, 7 days post-incident. No further action available. 7 days after her arrest. 4 days after she'd requested the footage. Someone had deleted it. She'd never prove who. The log didn't track individual access. The corruption could have been deliberate or mechanical. The IT department claimed they couldn't determine which. Convenient. Renee filed the response, added it to her personal archive. A growing folder of near misses, partial victories, and evidence that disappeared just before it could matter. 6 months after the trial, Renee visited Maya for dinner. First time in weeks. Her sister hugged her at the door. "You look exhausted." "I am." They sat in the kitchen. Maya served pasta, poured wine, waited for Renee to talk. "I thought winning would feel different," Renee said finally. "You were acquitted. That's a win." The charges were dropped. Travis resigned. I got promoted. But nothing actually changed. "You're deputy chief now. You have power." "I have a title. Power is different. Every recommendation I make gets softened. Every investigation I push gets delayed. The system absorbs accountability like a sponge and squeezes out just enough reform to look responsive without actually changing." Maya sipped her wine. "So what do you do?" "I keep trying. What else is there?" "You could leave, do something else. You've given them 22 years. Renee shook her head. "If I leave, the next person might not fight as hard, might not care as much. I stay because someone has to." Maya reached across the table, squeezed her hand. "Just don't let it destroy you." Renee squeezed back. "I used to believe the system would self-correct, that good people doing good work would eventually win. Now I know it only corrects when forced, and even then, barely." They finished dinner in comfortable silence. Renee drove home, checked her locks, set her alarm, lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She'd survived. She'd won in court. She'd been promoted. But her faith in institutions, the faith that had sustained her through 2 decades of service, was gone. Burned away somewhere between the handcuffs and the verdict. Late one night, 6 months and 2 weeks after the trial, Renee sat at her desk reviewing disciplinary cases. Her email pinged. New message. Sender. Redacted. Subject. You should know. She opened it. "Deputy Chief Harlow, congratulations on your promotion. Thought you'd want to see this." An attachment. PDF file. She clicked. Personnel transfer request. Officer T. Dane to Riverside County Sheriff's Department. Application status. Interview scheduled. She scrolled down. His resume listed 3 years with Metro PD. Clean record. Resignation noted as voluntary career change. No mention of IA findings. No mention of the arrest. No mention of the trial. The Riverside recruiter had called Metro HR for a reference. The reference was positive. Officer Dane served with distinction, no disciplinary issues, eligible for rehire. Renee's jaw clenched. She forwarded the email to her personal account.
Added it to her evidence file. Travis Dane would be hired. He'd wear a badge again. He'd make traffic stops in another county. And eventually, maybe in 6 months, maybe in 2 years, he'd arrest someone who didn't have the resources to fight back. Someone without a law degree or a badge. Someone the system wouldn't protect. And the cycle would continue. She closed her laptop, looked out her window. Patrol cars rolled through the district below, officers on evening shift, some of them good, some of them decent, and some, like Travis, learning that misconduct had no real consequences. The system had bent. It hadn't broken. Tomorrow, she'd wake up and try again. She'd review cases. She'd push for accountability. She'd fight battles she'd probably lose. Because if she stopped, who would? She turned off her office light, locked the door, walked to her car. The keyed scratch on the driver's side door had been repaired months ago, but she could still see it in the right light, a scar that wouldn't fully fade. She drove home through streets she'd sworn to protect, knowing that protection was conditional, that justice was partial, that the system she'd dedicated her life to would always protect itself first. But she'd keep fighting anyway. Not because she believed she'd win, because some fights were worth having, even when you knew the ending. 1 year after the trial, Renee attended a city council meeting. Community activists were speaking, demanding police reform, citing her case as evidence that the department couldn't police itself. Councilmember Torres stood. "We're implementing body camera requirements with automatic activation. Traffic stop data will be published quarterly, and we're appointing a civilian oversight board to review complaints." Applause. The activists nodded, took their seats. Renee sat in the back, expressionless. Body cameras with automatic activation, good policy. If enforced, if funded. If officers didn't find ways to obstruct or disable them. Traffic stop data published quarterly, useful. If analyzed. If patterns were addressed, if departments faced consequences for disparities. Civilian Oversight Board, promising. If given real authority, if not staffed by former cops or prosecutors, if complaints were investigated thoroughly, big ifs. She left before the meeting ended, drove to her office, found another email waiting. DOJ update, preliminary inquiry continuing. Estimated timeline for pattern or practice determination, 18 to 24 months. 2 years. Minimum. And if the DOJ found a pattern, then what? A consent decree? A monitor? Reforms that would take a decade to implement and another decade to enforce? She forwarded the email to her archive, closed her laptop. Some nights she wondered if she'd made a difference, if the trial had changed anything beyond her own trajectory. Most nights she knew the answer. The system had adjusted. It always did. Just enough pressure released to prevent explosion. Just enough accountability to claim progress. Just enough reform to survive. But it hadn't transformed. It hadn't reckoned with itself. It hadn't looked in the mirror and admitted what it had become. And until it did, officers like Travis Dane would keep getting hired, keep making stops, keep escalating, keep arresting people who couldn't fight back. Renee turned off her computer, stood, stretched. Her shoulder still ached on cold days, a permanent reminder of February 14th. She walked to the window, looked down at the precinct parking lot, rows of patrol cars, officers changing shifts, some heading out, some heading home. Tomorrow she'd review more cases. She'd push for more investigations. She'd fight more battles in a war that had no end. Because someone had to. And if not her, 22 years of service, a wrongful arrest survived, a badge that still meant something, then who? She grabbed her coat, locked her office, walked to her car. The night was cold, clear, stars visible despite the city lights. She drove home, set her alarm for 5:45 a.m. Tomorrow she'd try again. That was all she could do, try again, and hope that eventually, somehow, it would be enough. End epilogue. The stinger. 2 days after the city council meeting, Renee's phone rang at 6 a.m. Unknown number. She answered. Deputy Chief Harlow? Speaking. This is Sergeant Reeves, Riverside County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling about a reference check. We have an applicant, Travis Dane, who listed Metro PD as previous employment. I spoke with your HR department, but I wanted to get a supervisor's perspective. Did you work with Officer Dane? Renee's hand tightened on the phone. Yes. Can you speak to his performance? She could say it all. The arrest, the trial, the pattern, the complaints. She could end his career with one conversation, but she'd signed no legal agreements, owed him no protection. The truth was fair game. Officer Dane resigned in lieu of disciplinary action after violating department policy. An internal affairs investigation found that he failed to follow procedures during a custodial incident. I cannot recommend him for hire. Silence. I see. That's not what HR told us. HR provides dates of service. I provide professional judgment. If you hire Officer Dane, you're hiring someone with a documented pattern of procedural violations and complaints from motorists of color. Another pause. Thank you, Deputy Chief. This is helpful. The line went dead. Renee set down the phone, stared at it. One reference check, one conversation. Maybe it would matter. Maybe Riverside would pass on Travis. Maybe he'd be forced to find another path. Or maybe he'd apply to the next county, and the next. Until he found a department that didn't call for references, that didn't care about patterns, that valued arrests over accountability. She'd never know. All she could do was tell the truth when asked, and hope it was enough. She finished her coffee, drove to work, started her day. Outside her office window, patrol cars rolled out for morning shift. The system kept turning, and she kept fighting. Because some battles were worth having, even when you couldn't win, even when the system bent but never broke, even when justice was partial, delayed, and earned through exhausting procedural wars that left scars no one else could see. She opened her laptop, pulled up the first case file of the day, and tried again. The Federal Monitor's report landed on Renee's desk on a Tuesday morning in March, 347 pages, spiral-bound. Cover page stamped with the Department of Justice seal and a classification marking, law enforcement sensitive, not for public release. She'd been waiting for this document for 14 months, ever since the DOJ elevated their preliminary inquiry to a full pattern or practice investigation, ever since federal attorneys descended on Metro PD with subpoenas, requesting every traffic stop record, use of force report, and complaint file dating back 5 years. Renee opened to the executive summary. Read the first paragraph. This investigation finds reasonable cause to believe that the Metro Police Department engages in a pattern or practice of conduct that deprives individuals of rights protected by the Constitution and federal law. Specifically, the department has violated the 4th and 14th Amendments through unconstitutional stops, searches, and arrests that disproportionately impact Black and Hispanic residents. She read it again. Let the words settle. Reasonable cause, pattern or practice, constitutional violations, official language for what she'd known for years. The report detailed 43 case studies, traffic stops without probable cause, searches based on race rather than evidence, arrests that escalated from minor infractions because officers felt disrespected, use of force that exceeded what situations required. Case study number 17 was hers. 8 pages analyzing February 14th, the stop, the arrest, the missing bodycam footage, the IA investigation that had cleared everyone except Travis Dane, who'd been allowed to resign. The federal analysis was blunt. Officer Dane's arrest of Commander Harlow exemplifies systemic failures in accountability. Despite dispatch confirmation of her identity and rank, Officer Dane proceeded with custodial arrest. His bodycam activation occurred only after arrest. Officer Vickers' bodycam experienced equipment malfunction precisely during the interaction. Internal Affairs dismissed Commander Harlow's complaint within 2 weeks, despite clear procedural violations. Officer Dane faced no criminal charges and was permitted to resign with a clean record, enabling future employment in law enforcement. The report continued. This case is particularly significant because the victim held command rank within the department. If a police commander can be unlawfully arrested and have her complaint dismissed through inadequate investigation, the likelihood of accountability for civilian complainants approaches zero. Renee's phone rang. Chief Warren. Deputy Chief, I assume you've seen the report. I'm reading it now. The DOJ is requiring a consent decree, federal oversight for at least 5 years, maybe 10. What are the terms? Body camera requirements with third-party auditing, ban on pretextual stops, mandatory de-escalation training every 6 months, civilian review board with subpoena power, use of force investigations conducted by external agencies, complete overhaul of internal affairs. Renee set down the report. Those are substantial reforms. They're also expensive. The city's looking at $20 million in implementation costs. The union is threatening legal action, and half the command staff thinks this is federal overreach. What do you think? Warren exhaled. The sound of someone who'd spent 30 years navigating politics and was tired of it. I think we should have done this ourselves 10 years ago, but we didn't. So now the feds are doing it for us. He paused. There's something else. The consent decree requires appointment of a reform coordinator, someone internal who can work with the federal monitor. I'm recommending you. Renee's pulse quickened. That's a full-time position. It is. You'd step away from your current duties, report directly to me and the monitor, implement the reforms, track compliance, push back against resistance, and there will be resistance. Why me? Because you understand the system, because you've been through it from both sides, and because when officers complain that reforms are unfair, you can look them in the eye and tell them what unfair actually looks like. Renee considered. Reform coordinator meant becoming the face of change, the target of resentment, the person blamed when reforms made jobs harder, schedules longer, scrutiny heavier. It also meant leverage, real authority to implement changes that might actually stick. I'll do it. Good. You start in 2 weeks. Prepare for pushback. The pushback came immediately. The police union held a press conference the day after the consent decree was announced. President Kevin Mallory stood at a podium, flanked by officers in uniform. This federal investigation is based on cherry-picked cases and politically motivated complaints. The DOJ found a pattern because they wanted to find one. Metro PD serves this community with professionalism and restraint. Yes, we make mistakes, but painting the entire department as constitutional violators is insulting to the men and women who risk their lives every day. A reporter raised her hand. President Mallory, the report cites 43 cases of rights violations. Commander Harlow's arrest is included. Do you dispute those findings? Mallory's expression hardened. Commander Harlow's case was an unfortunate misunderstanding between 2 officers. It was resolved. Officer Dane resigned. Lessons were learned. Using that incident to justify federal oversight of 900 officers is absurd. Another reporter. The report shows that black motorists are stopped at 3 times the rate of white motorists in District 9. How do you explain that disparity? Crime statistics. District 9 has higher crime rates in predominantly black neighborhoods. Officers patrol where crime occurs. That's not bias. That's data-driven policing. Renee watched the press conference from her office. Every answer was a deflection. Every statistic twisted. Every accountability measure framed as persecution. She'd worked with Kevin Mallory for 15 years. Decent guy on a personal level. But his job was protecting officers, not holding them accountable. And he was good at his job. Her phone buzzed. Text from Janelle Wu. Saw the press conference. He's setting you up as the villain. Be careful. Renee typed back. I know. Thanks for the heads up. She pulled up the consent decree implementation timeline. 67 action items. Deadlines ranging from 30 days to 3 years. Every item would be fought, delayed, or watered down by the union, the city council, or command staff who saw reform as threat rather than necessity. She started with the easiest wins, low-hanging fruit that couldn't be credibly opposed. Week 1. Implemented online complaint portal. Previously, filing a complaint required visiting a precinct in person during business hours, requesting a form from the desk sergeant, and submitting it to Internal Affairs, which discouraged all but the most determined complainants. The new portal allowed anonymous submissions, automatic tracking numbers, and 30-day response requirements. The union complained it would generate frivolous complaints. Renee noted that frivolous complaints could be dismissed quickly, while legitimate complaints deserved easy access. Week 2. Established monthly Use of Force Review Board with civilian members. Previously, use of force incidents were reviewed internally by supervisors with vested interest in justifying their officers' actions. The new board included community advocates, legal experts, and a trauma surgeon who could assess whether injuries were consistent with officers' descriptions. The union complained it violated due process. Renee noted that review wasn't discipline. It was oversight. Officers still had full grievance rights if discipline was recommended. Week 3. Required bodycam activation for all enforcement contacts. Previously, officers had discretion. The new policy mandated activation or written justification within 8 hours, explaining why footage didn't exist. Third-party vendor would audit compliance monthly. The union filed a grievance, claimed it was technologically infeasible. Renee provided data from 12 other departments that had implemented identical policies successfully. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. 3 months into the consent decree, the federal monitor conducted her first site visit. Rachel Brennan, former federal prosecutor, 15 years overseeing police reform in 4 cities. Sharp, thorough, immune to bureaucratic resistance. She met with Renee in a conference room on the 3rd floor. Deputy Chief, I've reviewed your implementation reports. You're ahead of schedule on 17 items. Behind on 6. The delays are mostly union-related. Correct. Kevin Mallory is fighting bodycam requirements, civilian review, and external use of force investigations. Expected. How are you managing pushback from rank-and-file officers? Renee pulled out a folder. Anonymous complaints she'd received since becoming reform coordinator. I've been called a traitor, a sellout, and a federal lapdog. My car was keyed again, this time in the secured parking garage. Someone left a note in my mailbox at home telling me to watch my back. And 3 officers requested transfers out of District 9 specifically because they didn't want to work under my chain of command. Rachel's expression didn't change. She'd heard worse. Are you documenting these incidents? Yes, I'm also ignoring them. If I respond to every threat or insult, I spend my time being defensive instead of implementing reforms. Smart, but don't ignore the physical threats. If someone's escalating beyond words, we need to know. Renee nodded. Rachel flipped through her notes. I want to talk about Officer Dane. The consent decree requires Metro PD to notify future employers when former officers resign in lieu of discipline. Has that been implemented? Partially. HR created a flagging system. If a department calls for reference, they're routed to my office instead of getting a generic confirmation of employment dates. And you're providing accurate information? Yes. I've fielded 4 calls in 3 months, 2 from Riverside County. They passed on Travis after I explained his IA findings. 1 from a private security firm, same result. 1 from a small-town department in Nevada that hired him anyway. Rachel's pen stopped. Nevada hired him despite your disclosure? The chief told me they were desperate for bodies, and everyone deserves a second chance. I told him that Travis Dane had 3 prior complaints before mine. He said those were dismissed, so they didn't count. Where is Dane now? Patrol officer in Boulder Creek, Nevada, population 4,200, 1-man department most shifts, minimal oversight. Rachel made a note. I'll flag that for the Nevada Attorney General. If he's operating under those conditions with his history, it's a liability waiting to happen. She closed her folder. Last question. How are you holding up personally? Renee considered lying, saying she was fine, pushing through, handling it. Instead, she told the truth. I'm exhausted. I sleep 4 hours a night. I've gained 15 pounds from stress eating. My sister says I've stopped returning her calls. And some days, I wonder if this is worth it. Implementing reforms that half the department will sabotage the moment federal oversight ends. Rachel leaned back. I've overseen 6 consent decrees. They take 7 to 12 years on average. Some cities backslide the moment we leave. Others maintain reforms because the culture actually shifted. You know what makes the difference? What? People like you. Internal reformers who stay when it's hard. Who fight battles they'll lose more often than they win. Who document everything so the next generation has a foundation. She stood, extended her hand. You won't see results for years, maybe decades. But what you're doing matters. Don't let the bastards convince you otherwise. Renee shook her hand, watched her leave, sat alone in the conference room for 10 minutes before returning to her office. Rachel was right. This would take years. And even then, success wasn't guaranteed. But it was the fight she'd chosen. So she'd keep fighting. 6 months into the consent decree, the first officer was terminated under new accountability standards. Officer Kyle Brenner. 7 years on the force. 12 complaints, all dismissed before the reforms. Then the Civilian Review Board reopened 3 cases involving excessive force. Found patterns that A had missed or ignored. Renee reviewed the board's findings. Brenner had a habit of escalating traffic stops into physical confrontations, chest bumps, aggressive language, hands on shoulders that transitioned to shoves when motorists didn't comply fast enough. The review board recommended termination. Chief Warren agreed. The union appealed. The arbitration hearing lasted 3 days. Renee testified about the pattern analysis. The review board presented video evidence. Brenner's attorney argued he was being scapegoated to satisfy the feds. The arbitrator ruled in favor of termination. Officer Brenner's conduct demonstrates a pattern of unnecessary escalation. While individual incidents might be defended as split-second decisions, the totality shows an officer who seeks confrontation rather than de-escalation. Termination upheld. Kevin Mallory held another press conference. Today, a good officer lost his job because the department caved to federal pressure. Kyle Brenner served this community for 7 years. He made arrests that kept neighborhoods safe. And now he's unemployed because some review board decided his tone was too aggressive. A reporter pushed back. President Mallory, the arbitrator reviewed video of Officer Brenner shoving 3 different motorists during routine stops. How is that defensible? Those motorists were non-compliant. When you resist, officers use force. That's the job. None of those motorists were charged with resisting arrest. Mallory's face reddened. Because progressive prosecutors refuse to file charges. Officers do their jobs, then get hung out to dry by the system. Renee watched from her office again, turned off the screen before the press conference ended. 1 termination, 6 months of work, hundreds of hours of review. And the union would spin it as persecution. But 1 termination was more than Metro PD had done in the previous 3 years combined. Progress, incremental, painful, real. 9 months into the consent decree, Renee attended her first community forum under the new civilian oversight structure. 200 residents packed the rec center on Madison Avenue, the same venue where she'd spoken 18 months ago, hours before Travis Dane pulled her over. The oversight board chair, a civil rights attorney named Marcus Holloway, moderated. He invited residents to share experiences, to ask questions, to hold the department accountable in real time. A black woman in her 60s stood, gripped the microphone. My son was stopped 7 times last year. 7. He drives a nice car, works in tech, never been arrested, but he gets pulled over for broken taillights that aren't broken, unsafe lane changes that didn't happen. He's terrified every time he sees red and blues. That's not policing. That's harassment. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Marcus looked at Renee. Deputy Chief Harlow is here representing Metro PD. Deputy Chief, how does the department respond? Renee stood, approached the microphone, made eye contact with the woman who'd spoken. "Ma'am, thank you for sharing that. You're describing what we call pretextual stops, stops initiated on minor or fabricated violations as an excuse to investigate unrelated suspicions. The consent decree bans pretextual stops. Officers now must document specific, articulable reasons for every stop. We're auditing stop data monthly to identify patterns." The woman's expression didn't soften. "That's policy. I'm asking about reality. Is my son going to keep getting stopped?" Renee didn't flinch. "I can't promise he won't. Changing policy is faster than changing culture. Some officers will comply. Others will find workarounds. Our job is to catch the workarounds and hold officers accountable when they violate policy." "How long will that take?" "Honestly, years. Real culture change in a 900-officer department takes sustained pressure over time, but we're building the infrastructure to make it possible." The woman sat, not satisfied, but not dismissive. Another resident stood, Hispanic man in his 40s. "I filed a complaint 2 years ago. Officer pulled me over, searched my car without permission, found nothing, let me go. I submitted the complaint, never heard back. How is that accountability?" Marcus checked his notes. Under the old system, complaints were reviewed by Internal Affairs with no civilian input and no response requirement. Under the new system, every complaint gets a tracking number, a 30-day response, and civilian review board oversight. "Mr. Reyes, if you'd like to refile under the new process, we can ensure it's investigated properly." The man nodded, wrote down the website. For 90 minutes, residents spoke, shared stories, asked hard questions. Some were skeptical, some were hostile. None were satisfied with vague promises. Renee answered every question directly. Didn't make promises she couldn't keep. Didn't sugarcoat timelines. Didn't claim the department had solved problems that would take years to address. At the end, a young black woman, college-aged, articulate, raised her hand. "Deputy Chief Harlow, I read about your case. You were arrested by one of your own officers. You went to trial. You won. And now you're in charge of reforming the department that tried to bury you. Why are you still here? Why fight for a system that treated you like that?" Renee paused. The room went silent. "Because if I leave, the next person might not fight as hard, might not care as much. I stay because someone has to. And if not me, someone who's been through it, someone who knows how the system protects itself. Then who?" The young woman nodded slowly. "That's real. Thank you." 12 months into the consent decree, Renee received an email from an unfamiliar address. Subject: "You should know what happened." She opened it. "Deputy Chief Harlow, my name is Sophia Martinez. I live in Boulder Creek, Nevada. Last month, Officer Travis Dane pulled me over for expired registration. My registration wasn't expired. I checked the sticker 3 times after he left. He made me get out of the car, stand on the side of the highway at night, asked me where I was coming from, where I was going, who I'd been with. I told him I was driving home from work. He said I looked nervous, asked to search my car. I said no. He said refusing made him suspicious. I still said no. He gave me a warning for improper lane usage that never happened and let me go." The email continued. "I filed a complaint with the Boulder Creek PD. The chief told me Officer Dane is one of our best, and I misunderstood the interaction. I found your name through a news article about his previous department. I'm writing because I don't know what else to do. If he did this to you, someone with rank and authority, what chance do I have?" Renee read the email twice, then forwarded it to Rachel Brennan with a note. "This is the officer I told you about. His pattern continues. What can we do?" Rachel responded within an hour. "I've already contacted Nevada AG. They're opening an inquiry. But Nevada has no consent decree, minimal oversight, and a law enforcement culture even more resistant to accountability than most. I'll keep you updated, but don't expect quick results." Renee typed a response to Sophia. "Ms. Martinez, thank you for reaching out. I've forwarded your complaint to federal authorities who are monitoring Officer Dane. I cannot promise immediate action, but your voice matters. Please document everything: dates, times, witnesses. If he stops you again, comply with lawful orders but do not consent to searches. Record if possible. And know that you're not alone. I believe you. She hit send. Stared at the screen. Travis Dane was doing exactly what she'd predicted. Exactly what the system had enabled by letting him resign with a clean record. And now someone else was paying the price. 18 months into the consent decree, Renee sat in Rachel Brennan's office reviewing compliance data. Body camera activation, 92% compliance, up from 61% before reforms. Civilian complaints, up 38%. But that's expected. Easier reporting increases volume. Sustained rate is up too, 14% compared to 3% pre-reform. Use of force incidents, down 22% overall. De-escalation training is working. Traffic stop disparities, black motorists still stopped at 2.1 times the rate of white motorists, down from 3.0, but still significant. Rachel set down her tablet. You're making progress, not as fast as we'd like, not as comprehensive as the decree requires, but measurable, documented progress. The union is still fighting external investigations. Let them fight. The decree isn't negotiable. They can grieve every reform, but the court will uphold our authority. Rachel pulled out a separate folder. There's something else. I've been authorized to extend your appointment as reform coordinator through the full consent decree period, potentially 10 years. Are you willing? 10 years. A decade of resistance, threats, incremental wins, and exhausting battles. Renee thought about Sofia Martinez in Nevada, about the 3 officers who'd transferred out of her district, about the 64 other cases in the DOJ report, people who'd been violated and had no voice. Yes, I'm willing. Rachel smiled. Good, because you're the reason this is working. Most departments fight us every step. You've built internal support, created momentum. That's rare. She closed the folder. One more thing. I spoke with the Nevada AG yesterday. They're opening a civil rights investigation into Boulder Creek PD. Officer Dane is the primary focus. If they find a pattern, and they will, he'll face termination and potential criminal charges for civil rights violations. Renee's chest tightened. How long? 12 to 18 months for the investigation, then litigation if he fights it. But he won't be a cop much longer. Unless he applies to another department first. Which is why we're recommending a national registry. Officers terminated for misconduct would be flagged across all 50 states. It's years away from implementation, but it's being discussed. Renee nodded. Years away. Always years. But years were better than never. That night, Renee drove through District 9, past the corner where Travis had pulled her over, past the rec center where she'd faced skeptical residents, past the precinct where her car had been keyed twice. She pulled into her driveway, sat in the dark for a moment. Her phone buzzed. Text from Maya. Dinner this weekend? Miss you. Renee typed back. Yes. Sorry I've been absent. You're saving the world. I get it. But save some time for family, too. Renee smiled. First genuine smile in days. Deal. She got out of the car, unlocked her front door, set her keys on the counter. The apartment was quiet, clean, impersonal. She hadn't redecorated since moving in 3 years ago. Hadn't had time. She poured a glass of wine, sat on the couch, pulled up the DOJ report on her tablet, read case study number 17 again. If a police commander can be unlawfully arrested and have her complaint dismissed through inadequate investigation, the likelihood of accountability for civilian complainants approaches 0. She'd been that commander. And now she was the person trying to change the system that had failed her. Some days it felt impossible. The resistance was constant. The progress was glacial. The setbacks were demoralizing. But other days, days when she saw compliance data trending upward, when she read emails from residents like Sofia Martinez, when she watched officers actually de-escalate instead of escalating. Those days, it felt possible. Not certain, not guaranteed, but possible. And possible was enough. She finished her wine, set the glass in the sink, checked her locks, set her alarm for 5:45 a.m. Tomorrow, she'd review 23 use-of-force incidents. She'd mediate a dispute between the Civilian Review Board and the union. She'd testify at a city council budget hearing about funding for body camera storage. Small battles in a long war, but she'd fought bigger battles, survived worse odds. And she'd wake up tomorrow and fight again. Because that's what she did. That's who she was. Deputy Chief Renee Harlow, Badge 1147, 24 years of service. And counting. Final stinger. 2 years and 3 months after her arrest, Renee received a notification from the Nevada Attorney General's office. Officer Travis Dane had been terminated from Boulder Creek PD following a civil rights investigation. 3 additional complainants had come forward. The patterns were undeniable. He was facing federal charges under 18 U.S.C. Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. If convicted, he'd face up to 10 years in prison. Renee read the notification twice, then filed it. Justice. Delayed. Partial. But real. 1 officer held accountable. 1 pattern disrupted. 1 system forced to bend a little further. It wasn't enough. But it was something. And something was better than nothing. She closed her laptop, looked out her office window. Patrol cars rolling through the district. Officers starting their shifts. Some of them would resist reforms. Some would comply grudgingly. Some would embrace them. The culture was changing. Slowly. Painfully. Imperfectly. But it was changing. And she'd be there to make sure it kept changing. For as long as it took. Because that's what the fight required. Persistence. Documentation. Refusal to quit. Even when the system bent but didn't break. Even when victory was partial and progress was glacial. Even when some mornings she woke up exhausted and wondered if any of this mattered. She'd keep fighting. Because if she didn't, who would? And if not now, when? The answer was always the same. Now, today. Again. She grabbed her coffee, headed to her next meeting. The fight continued, and so did she.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. If you found the content helpful, please remember to like and subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming episodes. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. We are always here to listen.